Welcome to the PIC Family Voices podcast, a space for families of children and youth with disabilities and special healthcare needs and the dedicated professionals who support them. Join us as we dive into topics from early childhood and healthcare to education, behavioral health, and life after high school, everything that shapes our shared experience. Our mission is to equip you with the insights, resources, and a supportive community to help you navigate this journey in ways that work for you, your family, and the people you care about.
Hi everyone, today we're talking with Chris Riley. Chris is an early childhood educator with deep expertise in literacy development and language-based learning disabilities. She holds an MED in early childhood education, a doctorate in educational leadership focused on phonological processing and educator training, and advanced certifications in dyslexia studies and as a reading writing specialist. Throughout her career as a preschool coordinator, special education case manager, and adjunct professor, Chris has supported students from preschool through university, specializing in teaching foundational literacy skills. Currently, she serves as a reading writing specialist in a southern New Hampshire school district and tutors secondary students in academic writing. Chris is certified in numerous evidence-based literacy approaches, including Wilson, Orton-Gillingham, and Letters, and holds multiple teaching certifications across general and special education. Welcome, Chris. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So we have some introductory questions to get to know you. Can you tell us a little about your background and what drew you to early childhood language and literacy?
To be honest, I think I spent the weekend with my mom, so she'll tell you that I was always that child was had her nose in a book, especially when chores were necessary. You would always find me in the back room under a bed, under a table, sitting sideways in a chair reading. So I was always one of those children who was always reading. And then as an adult, I was interested in writing, so I became a technical writer for software engineering, and quality assurance. And then when I decided to go back to school for education, I just had to do early childhood education, focusing pretty much on literacy, the pre-literacy skills, the writing skills, how to become a reader and writer. When you were 2, 3, 4 years old, that was just exciting. And watching children do that, that was kind of my thing. Like I just loved watching them do it, and was like, well, how do people learn to read? How do people get involved in literacy? Like how do we think? And it was more like neurologically, how do we process language? How do we learn language? It was very exciting. So I just had to do it.
Oh, and your students are so lucky to have you. Was there a moment, maybe a childhood experience that sparked your passion for helping young children develop these skills?
I think it probably, like I said, came from the fact that was just I was always had an affinity for it as a child. At school, at our own school, we talk about the SRA readers, where um, as a student back in the like 70s and 80s and 90s, you used to be able to go find like the color, and you'd get to basically get a little book and read the book and answer the questions, and like your goal was to get through as many books as possible. Very few districts have those kinds of things anymore, and definitely not science reading, evidence based, those kinds of things. But it was just something that like I needed to do and love to do. And then as an educator, what I found is that I would find students who, no matter what we were teaching or how we were teaching, it was still a struggle. So being a puzzle solver, so being sort of that technical writer, being that software engineering kind of mathematical brain, I needed to solve the problem. Like, why? Why is it hard for, someone that I've been working with for, 8 weeks not picking it up? What can I do differently? Or what don't I understand so that I could reach them? And so that sort of started the journey of, the next degree, the next research, the next degree, so I could solve it.
Oh, that's excellent. Yeah, it sounds like your background just made you perfect for this. When we talk about language and literacy, especially for babies and toddlers, what does that really mean?
The neat part about language is innate, as opposed to reading is not a natural process. We actually need to so go on to our neurological system and sort of put on and reuse a part of our brain that is sort of meant for a different purpose. But for children, for us as human beings, language is a natural process. And there's that receptive piece where we're listening to language and we're understanding words. And there's that expressive language where we have, children starting to like imitate and coo and make sounds and then say words and then put words together to phrases and sentences. And so that's that expressive language piece. And all of that is part of literacy. I don't know that people always understand that literacy is oral language. I mean, language is sort of like the foundation, it's the base, and it's pretty exciting. And it starts with that babbling and cooing to single words to phrases and sentences. Then the next piece is vocabulary. Vocabulary is critical. The more and more research that's happening is they're talking about building that vocabulary. It's kind of an unconstrained skill. The deeper your vocabulary, the broader your vocabulary, the further you can go. And it's very, very important as a young child, but it becomes even increasingly more important in upper elementary through adulthood, through basically through adulthood, college years, those kinds of things. So building that vocabulary through hearing stories, engaging in reciprocal turn-taking conversations, that is a critical skill. And then, like I said, the oral language of what is the prosody? How do you listen to the rhythm of our speech? Where do you hear those stops, those pauses, the intonation of how high our voice goes, how low our voice goes? All of those things are pretty critical for young children to hear and learn. That's why speech language pathologists in early childhood are so critical. They're just such critical people in that they have these deep skills. Then you get into emergent literacy, and you're talking about what they call phonological sensitivity and phonological awareness. And that's understanding that these strings of language that you're hearing right now are separated into like words, and then words are separated into sounds and all of those things, and then you can actually manipulate them. That's when you're talking about phonemic awareness. You can manipulate them, and you can basically say bat and change that initial sound, that b, to a k, and you go from bat to cat. So that's phonological awareness, but it starts with phonemic awareness. I apologize, that's phonemic awareness, but it starts with that phonological sensitivity, the rhyming, the alliteration. How many words do you hear in like this sentence? How many syllables in the word Riley? That kind of thing. And that's really important for children to start to distinguish, especially in early childhood, preschool. Right now, I happen to be teaching 4-year-olds, and we're doing a lot of that. We get very excited when we're teaching words with 3 syllables, or just this past week, we worked on the word decoration, and that was just mind blowing because we can hold on to 2, but 4 was pushed to the envelope.
Yeah, that's a big word for
It was a
4-year-olds.
very big word for a 4-year-old, but they were like, "We want a challenge." And we're like, "Okay." So,
Aw.
other thing is, book handling skills. Kind of like, do you understand what a book is? Do you understand that those pictures can tell a story? Those words, those symbols on a page, those are words, and they actually convey meaning. Do you understand that that for in English, basically we use that left to right, top to bottom orientation, but in other cultures it's different. So there's the book handling skills, and then there's even the pre-writing skills of um, holding a big crayon, holding chalk, basically using those daubers to daub on, anything, going outside and, drawing on the sidewalk kind of thing. So all of those early writing skills come in to do it. And then the interactions and experiences. So those language rich environment, just like the conversations we're having with those with children. And then that it fosters that positive interaction and that warmth and caring and that embracing of connectivity between like an adult and a caregiver. So that is super wonderful. And then truly, it's also exposure to books. Um, so basically, reading aloud to the babies and toddlers from an early age. Basically, you're fostering that love of literacy and language the whole time through. So again, it happens. Honestly, it actually happens in utero, which is pretty exciting. Um, Dr. Gab from Harvard University, she and a colleague, Ted Tureski, have been working on when does the divergence happen, because I happen to be a dyslexia specialist kind of thing. But Ted Tureski and Nadine Gab have been exploring in that the differences in how our brains experience language. We used to think it happened like in preschool, 3s and 4s, and now they're finding that it even can happen as early as 18 months old.
Oh, that's fascinating.
the newest research that's coming out. So it's like, okay, so it just means to us, to all of the, parents and caregivers and early childhood educators, that we need to start early, like right away.
Yeah.
It's like, right, when they're in utero, start singing and playing word games and talking to them, like we probably all do anyway. But it's like, but so.
And so when parents hear that, sometimes they think, oh, I should be my kid's teacher at home. But a term that we hear sometimes is serve and return. Can you
Mhm.
explain what that looks like in everyday moments with a baby or young child?
All right, serve and return is a pretty exciting thing, and it sort of made sort of, I think it was like national news like 2 or 3 years ago. You would see like on Instagram and other things, these pictures of these gentlemen literally talking to their children, talking to their babies, and the child would be just like, babbling away, and the adult would be like, "Ooh, oh, I cannot believe you said that. Wow, explain that to me." So, and it's really exciting. So serve and return is just, think, I was going to say tennis, but if you don't play tennis, think pickleball. Basically, that responsive back and forth, that exchange, that reciprocal turn taking, that again, speech language pathologists love, parents and children love, because, you're like, did you hear me? Could you respond? It's that give and take, that back and forth between an adult and a child. The neat part about it is you're cool thing about language, and maybe this is the nerd in me, but the peak is that you're shaping your brain architecture. You're always working on that neurological pathways. It's so, so cool. So what you're doing is you're making that interaction back and forth, and you're creating all of those social emotional skills. So you're talking about turn taking, you're talking about joint attention, like someone's going to actually look towards you and expect some kind of thing back. So you're working all that social engagement. So you're talking about discourse and social pragmatics. So exciting. And you're basically creating the foundation, the level, the playing field for building further vocabulary skills, further language development in the future. You're basically starting to create the base for those high level cognitive abilities, which is
That's
so
yeah,
powerful.
that's so exciting. And so this back and forth with your baby, even if they're just cooing in response or
Mhm.
babbling, just responding back and forth to them is really what sets that foundation. Why is it so important, even if your baby can't talk yet? And it's a way to build. Can I start that again?
Yeah.
Why is it this back and forth conversation, even with the baby who can't talk yet, so important for building vocabulary and later reading skills?
So, what you were just talking about, basically, you're creating that environment so that children, one, are learning to like expect something back. So you're developing these amazing habits and these amazing skills to create this engagement. It's pretty exciting. So you're also doing that positive influence that's happening. So children are going to be expecting that, like, there's something coming back, and they're like, okay, so if I don't know, if I point and babble to something and point, a caregiver gal, I mean, eventually goes, oh, they mean this. You know what I mean? For example, I have a new family member, and she's calling bunnies, because we have so many bunnies in our neighborhood. She's pointing the bunnies, and she's calling them bananas.
Oh,
Some people think, oh, she means a banana. No, she's actually meaning the bunny rabbits. But that is her word for bunny rabbit. But people are misunderstanding. But at the same point, she's waiting for a response, and people are responding back. And they're like, oh yes, those are bunny rabbits, or those are rabbits. And then, if she points to fruit, this is a banana, that kind of thing. But she's looking for that feedback, which is wonderful, because if there's the absence of that serve and return interaction, it's going to deprive that brain of that positive stimulation. And then what the research has been finding is that if it happens enough, your body's Texas stress response kind of floods your system. So it can have a negative impact. I mean, that's excessive, but for
yeah.
people to understand that there's so many reasons that someone might want to engage in that consistent serve and return kind of thing. And it produces those positive, hormones in your body anyway, but it also produces that positive, like, oh, I get something back when I put forth these sounds or these words or these phrases. It's, providing that healthy development environment for children.
Yeah,
It's
and that's something simple that parents can do at home that they don't even realize they're teaching their child.
absolutely. Absolutely. That's what's so cool. Hmm.
And so now it's summer. I know we're all back to school shopping and getting our kids ready. What are some of the language and literacy skills children need to be ready for kindergarten? Not just knowing the alphabet, but things that might surprise families.
All right. Well, the exciting part for children, like like think 4 and 5 year olds, um, basically, can they put together like a puzzle? This is kind of an academic thing. I'm going to actually tell you what, like, I looked up sort of what kindergarten teachers are looking for, and having
Yeah.
worked with summer with a bunch of 4 year olds, can they play cooperatively or even show that they're interested in peers? Like that's a really important thing to see. Can they share? To a certain extent. Um, are they enthusiastic towards learning anything new? Do they want to explore something? Do they have any eagerness? Do they like to ask questions? What kind of risk taking are they? If they try something, are they willing to try something new? And if they're not willing to try something new, how do you encourage them to try something new? And it doesn't have to be huge. It could be like, do you like cats or dogs? Can they respond to just a question? That kind of thing. Can they persevere if things get tricky, if things are hard, if things are challenging? Um, those are sort of important things. Can they communicate their needs? I'm thirsty. I need to use the restroom. My shoe's untied. Those kinds of things. Can they sit and listen to a story? It doesn't have to be a long story, but are they comfortable sitting and listening to a story? So there's a lot of students um, just don't have the experience of sitting and listening to like a storybook. So it'd be great if they had that. And then how independent are they? Can they separate from parents and caregivers? And as an early childhood educator, we understand it's really, really hard. It's very, very hard. But over time, can they do it? Like if it happened, preschool happens 3 days in a row or 4 days in a row, by that fourth or fifth day, are they like, nope, mom, dad, nana, nanny, someone will be coming back for me after these 3 hours or these 4 hours, and setting that, like, I will leave, I will go play with my friends, I will do some things, and then I'll still, when I come back out, somebody will be there for me. Do they understand that there's that object permanence and it's okay to separate and then come back? Do you
Yeah,
feel?
and that was something, I had one that had a little bit of trouble separating at preschool, and the phrase the teacher told me to use was, "Mommy always comes back. Mommy always comes back." Because after, and that first time, I think was harder on me than it was on her. But
Hmm.
by the second and third time, when she realizes, oh, she really does always come back, that I
Hmm.
think that's so important for kids to understand. And so these skills, being able to take risks, to academic risks, social risks, being able to sit and listen to a story and have some independence, let their needs be known. Why is it so important to start supporting these skills before a child turns 5 and starts kindergarten?
Well, I looked up statistics because I wanted to see, basically according to 2021, because I was looking for more recent statistics, but it's so far not exactly available. About 30% of students, kindergarten students, were ready for kindergarten. Everybody else was not ready for kindergarten. So what happens is if they're not learning that somewhere else, the place to teach it will have to be kindergarten. And that's, again, kindergarten teachers do to a certain extent expect there's going to be a group of students who won't be ready. Everything is new. That will happen. That's where it will happen. It will happen in kindergarten. Thing is, what happens is everything becomes really challenging, really hard. So you're going to be learning your social emotional development, your motor skills, how to eventually hold a pencil or a crayon, how to look after yourself, how to, use the restroom, how to come back, and how to fasten your clothing, how to open your lunchbox or your little juice box. All of those things are learning events. So you're going to be learning all of those. In addition to, you're going to understand like the alphabetic principle, understanding that these crazy symbols that are both uppercase and lowercase, what? And then you remember, and then they are associated with sounds. Okay, so A looks like this. Oh, but it looks like that. And then don't throw in the typeface thing because that throws people too. And then it all represents the A sound and the A sound. And then you're going to make me actually start to blend them together to create words. So there's so much to learn. That's probably, as you can tell, why I'm so excited about it. It's like early literacy and early childhood. You're learning so much so quickly. So it's wonderful if there's sort of like some base level foundation when students come in, so they're not overwhelmed by all of that information. Because it can be overwhelming. It'd be tricky. I was even looking up today about redshirting kindergartners, because I guess it used to be like 4 to 6% of, and it used to be mostly young boys is what it
Yeah.
was. And I have to admit, I have a son who is older now, but when it went to readiness too, and I didn't know what readiness was when I moved to New Hampshire, and I
Yeah.
was readiness. So technically, he did kindergarten twice, or he did kindergarten and then kindergarten plus, but through readiness, and it worked for him. I know the research says no, by the time they're third grade, it all evens out, but it was just he really didn't have those foundational skills. He had academic skills, but he sat underneath tables facing away from anyone when they spoke with him. So it was like, so clearly as a parent, I should have worked more on those. But yeah,
Well,
he needed that practice.
yeah, and a lot of kids do. And I think it's so interesting that really education has changed, but also a lot of families' home lives have changed. I someone was discussing how this year's incoming kindergartners were the COVID babies that were born in 2020, now that it's 2025. And I
Mhm.
have a lot of friends with young kids that are saying, you know, there's been a lot of parents working from home, and the play groups, the daycare situations, everything looked really different those first few years of toddler development. So if you have an older kid, it wasn't necessarily the same sitting at the library story time and going to people's houses and going to playgrounds. There's a lot more social distancing, a lot more kids at home, a lot less play dates and big group situations. So they were talking about how school might look a little different with this new generation of students. What do you think about that?
Now I'm very excited. I was reading just recently that in the past week, the same thing, that this is, this is the year where we get our students who were born during COVID, because we had seen over the past several years the students who were home during like the COVID shutdown, the pandemic shutdown, and there was just that that turn, taking these social again. I'm going to shout out to the speech language pathologist. Basically, how to communicate with peers and with others, how to code switch between when you talk to an adult, when you talk to your peer, understanding discourse, this give and take, this serve and return. All of that was definitely impacted for all students, not just for students with language challenges, just for everybody, because it was different. We had a different experience. So it will be very interesting to see this group of children coming in, what their experiences are. Because, realistically, the entire globe experienced, a pandemic. So that was a trauma. So kind of finding how we all navigate through that trauma is going to be very interesting. And then the nice part is schools have lots of supports, which is wonderful, so there'll be support.
That's excellent for those kids that need it. And I think for all kids, schools really changed, and there's a lot more support with social, emotional, and behavioral needs that they're able to really support kids and families. So for families that may not have their child, and I know daycare wait lists are so long right now, and some people are working from home, so their kids are home. If families don't have their children in a daycare or preschool setting and are at home with them, what are some simple ways that families can build strong language and literacy skills during everyday routines, like folding their laundry, grocery shopping, sitting at the drive-through?
Honestly, we'll start with like basic talk. Just keep talking, but talk in interesting ways, and that start with when they're really young. You can use what they call like child directed language, or sort of I was researching about when we all talk to babies, our voices, our intonation changes, and it turns out that it happens globally. Like, doesn't matter what language you use, we change the register and the pitch of our tone. So our, like, it turns like the letter I, everyone tends to go higher for some reason, and people were like, yep, that seems to be a global thing. And babies really attune to that. Over time, though, use real language, like, talk about a vehicle, a car, don't have to use like baby talk, that kind of thing. So just have conversations, and then, because it's a conversation, ask a question, ask lots of questions, pause, wait for the answer, and respond. So have those narrative discussions. If you are going to the grocery store, talk about what you're going to do. Well, we're driving to the grocery store. What do you think we should buy? Why do we think we should buy that? How should I, I tend to be a short person. So I'd be like, how am I going to reach that on that shelf? Should I buy this green can of beans or this yellow can of beans? Like, bring in, we call them WHs, like, what, where, when, why, then how. Ask all of those questions and wait for the response. Um, Opportunities to play with other peers if they can. That's great. When you read a book with them, read, ask a question, wait for the response. Read silly stories, fairy tales, fables. I'm just thinking of, like, I was just reading, because we're working on the shh sound. I was reading Sheep in a Jeep. So I was
Um,
reading Nancy Shaw's books and Sheep in a Jeep, or we've been reading a lot of Froggy Goes Swimming or Froggy Gets Dressed, and the repetition of Froggy and then what. The children absolutely have the call and response. Reminds me of cheerleaders where they have the callbacks. It's the same thing. It's the call and response, and children get used to that predictability, but they're also highly engaged. So that really works. Again, sound games, driving down the road. I hear the sound, or I'm saying the sound cat. Can you think of a word that rhymes with cat? Those kinds of things. So there doesn't have to be direct teaching, because just by being out and about with your child, you are teaching. Just by them living their life, you are teaching.
That's good to know, because I feel like sometimes people want you to sit down and teach your child, and we're all so busy with work from home and all the kids and their activities and maybe too much screen time, that I feel like I don't have a big chunk of time to sit down and teach my child things, but just having these small moments to interact. And when you talk about the Froggy books, when my daughter loved the Froggy Bakes a Cake book, and we used to always say, they would like be mixing it, and we'd say, what do you think's going to happen with the WH questions? And they put in the, what do you think's going to happen? She'd always say, bake the cake, bake the cake. And then she remembered, and she goes, have a party. And it's making those big connections, not like what's immediately going to happen next, but what's going to happen next in the story. And so I know sometimes parents worry we're not doing enough because we don't have time to sit down and really teach and be a teacher. What would you say to them?
To be honest with you, my short answer is you are a teacher. Just by, being a parent and being
Yeah.
a caregiver, you are a teacher. So everything you're doing is, first of all, being absorbed, because we know our young little ones are, their eyes and ears are everywhere. They're paying attention to everything.
Yep.
And they always are, even when you think they're not. And so, I mean, pretty much you can just narrate what you're doing. It's like, oh, I need to do the laundry. We ran out of clean whatever. I need to do the sheets today. Oh, I'm going to put the sheets in the wash machine. So you can narrate what you're doing. Then as they've expanded their language, it's like, what do you think we're doing? It's like, oh yes, sheets. We're gonna wash the sheets. Or, oh yes, we need to feed the dog. That kind of thing. So all of those wonderful things that you're doing, you're basically going to, almost like you're narrating or self-talking to yourself, but you're doing it out loud for your child, and then you can ask them to do the same thing. And again, we go back to those WH questions. What are we doing? Where do you think we should go next? Or as they get older, and they're at that, like, that pre-alphabetic stage of their scribbling, and they want to scribble, have them make you a list. They'll make you the list, and have them have their paper in their list. And we all know it'll be a bunch of scribbles, but the great part is like they've participated in their list. It's like, oh, okay, we're going to go to the bank first, then we're going to go to the grocery store, then we might get our car washed. Or we're going to go to the bookstore to story time, something like, or the library. The children's library sections at our local libraries are fabulous. And the children's librarians have so much to share. They have so many great books and so many good activities to share. So that's the nice part, is there's a wealth of information out there. I know it can be hard to access it or get to it, but there is tons of information out there. So it'll be fun.
Yeah. So when people talk about a language rich environment, it's not necessarily sitting down and teaching your kid how to read. It's just using words, talking to them, narrating your day, asking those back and forth questions, even if they're too young to respond, just reacting to them and showing that you're understanding their facial expressions. Is that all it is? Just spending time with your kids?
It honestly, it really can be. It's the, I guess it's the conversation. It's the oral language. Tiffany Hogan, who runs the SAIL Lab out of Mass General Hospital, down in Boston, she talks about, oral language as being a foundation for literacy, and that really is kind of where it starts because obviously being an educator for teaching literacy, if children can't actually hear and produce the sounds, it's going to be more difficult for them to actually read and write the letters associated with the sounds. So it all starts again with oral language. So that talking piece is the most critical piece, and then what we can do is we can teach those constrained skills, which is, we're talking, phonics, a in the alphabetic principle, a represents a, and then we can build it together and blend and segment sounds into words and words into sentences and so on. And then the same thing, orthographically map that and create basically, paragraphs, sentences, words, sentences, paragraphs. However, if you don't know how to create the b sound for B, and then you don't represent that b sound makes the letter, represents this letter B, and this is how you form the letter B, all of those things, we need information and foundational skills before we even get to that part. So, so the language piece sort of helps with that, and then we even get to like how do you form it with your actual motorically with your mouth, that kind of thing, and how do you form the associated letter with your hand, those kinds of things.
Yeah, and I saw this really interesting thing that they said the English language has, they called it 45 phonemes. So in the English, when you're looking at like an A can say A, it can say ah, and that you can just say these words, say all the sounds that a letter makes to your baby and let them say them into a mirror to see the way their mouth looks while they're making them.
Absolutely. Right. That's exactly it. I mean, the English language has between 44 and 46 phoneme, depending on the researcher you follow. And then there are all those sounds associated with those graphemes, those letter symbols. And realistically, think about teaching how to read, teaching how to decode is it's making that connection that, A, just saying the sound A is represented by like the letter A, but the long sound A is represented by, at least, 7, 8 different grapheme patterns. You've got A, you've got A consonant E, you've got AI, you've got AY, you've got EIGH, it goes on. And then that's where you'll see your children in like, first grade, second grade, learning those systems. Um,
Okay.
but so that's kind of in, first or second grade, definitely into third grade. And usually by the end of third grade, people have got it. And if not, they may be receiving, some support somewhere to really understand how the system works. But when you're little, birth through age 5, you're truly understanding like, oh, these are words, these sounds that you're talking about are actually words, and words comprise like these crazy things called symbols, and these symbols are like letters and they represent something. So it's very abstract, but it all starts with oral language. And again, the things we were just talking now are what are constrained skills, and those are things that we can teach you exactly how to do those, whereas vocabulary, which is so critical, and that background knowledge is unconstrained, and that you're the more vocabulary, the more extensive your background knowledge, the deeper your background knowledge, the better off you'll be in, middle school, high school, and beyond. That goes into, so all these little constrained skills are fabulous, like, through early elementary school, but then it's that background knowledge and that unconstrained skills that are going to take you into the future. So you're building all that foundation birth through age 5.
Oh, that's excellent. And so I know once a child's in school, they have a lot of supports at school. So you have teachers, educators, experts that can really notice if something's not typical because there's peers to compare them to. If you have a class of 20 kids, you can tell if there's a kid that needs help and the school will step in to help them. Are there any signs families can look for, maybe when a child's 1, 2, or 3 years old, that might suggest a child could benefit from early intervention or extra support?
Absolutely. Early intervention is key. I know Parent Information Center understands that as well. But take a look and listen to, make sure, are they hearing you? Can they see you? Can they hear you? Let's, go to the senses. And if you're concerned, check with your pediatrician. Don't hesitate. Absolutely. Then when you're talking about language, are they making sort of the sounds that you're expecting? The ASHA, which is the American Speech Hearing Association, they have on their website sort of a developmental milestones for what sound you'd expect to hear by what age, that kind of thing. I know, like I said, I alluded to a colleague, a young child in our family that, we were making the b sound and the sound, but it's like, but we don't have the P sound yet, or we don't have the T sound yet. So we actually looked up. It's like, where does this fall in? As an educator, we always talk about the vocalic R, that kind of stuff.
Yep.
What sound do they say the sound, and what sound do they say the th, the sound, and when to worry and when not to worry. So you can definitely look all those things up. Can the children actually follow instructions? Do they have that joint attention? So if you say, go get the cup or go get the purple cup, and it's a sippy cup, can they do that? Hopefully it was within their reach, but I
Yeah.
mean, can they follow that one step direction? Can they follow two step directions? Are they hearing rhymes? Can they hear the rhyme word bat and cat, or bat octopus? Do you know that kind of thing? Yeah. And can they retell it like a story, a simple story, but can they retell a simple story? Um, those are kind of things you want to kind of listen for and look for. And if you have any concerns, absolutely reach out to your pediatrician.
That's
Um,
great advice. Thank you. Are there any books, songs, or games you love to recommend for families to help them with building language?
Probably books that a lot of people may have been using already, like the Bill Martin Jr. books, like the Brown Bear, What You See, any Art Carl books, like the Very Hungry Caterpillar. Basically, the ones that are super engaging. There's a repetition. There's that rhyme. The illustrations are super exciting for children. They're very like they're in board books now too, which is great. So the littles in our family have them in their mouths and are eating them all the time. So it's like, this
Yep.
is your book to eat, and this is the book I'm going to read to you. So. There's Jump Frog Jump, all the Goodnight Moon. Now they have like Goodnight Gorilla. I just came from Cape Cod, so there's Goodnight Cape Cod. Um, did a whole thing for school this past week on Goodnight Construction Site, which was
Yes, yes. My daughter loved that one when she was in preschool.
yeah, that's it. I have a preschool group this
Yep.
year, this summer, and we've gone through the Froggy series. Then we're going through there was an old woman who lived in a whatever series, and
Yep.
now we're doing like I said, the Good Night series, because they like the predictability of it, but it's changing enough. They're like, oh, that's different, and I'm like, yes, you're right, that's different. Like, they don't understand. They're doing a comparison contrast of two different texts. I mean, we'll have this conversation in seventh grade too, but I can do it at four, so it's
Oh,
pretty exciting. Obviously the Chicka Chicka Boom Boom, I mean, any ABC kind
yes.
of book. Is Your Mama a Llama? Those are great. And then, obviously, Where the Wild Things Are is great. Some students love it and some absolutely not too much. I had a daughter my daughter did not care for that. Mo Willems, all his Elephant and Piggies.
Oh, yes. We're a big Mo Williams fan here. Yep.
Yeah, corduroy books. Some kindergartners this past year have been very interested in the Who Would Win series, like, shark versus like rhinoceros, which I know like if my third graders enjoy it, but even my kindergartners are like, oh, and for them it's really looking at the pictures and I'm reading the captions, but they're very interested in the facts behind each animal, and then they have this deep conversation of why one would win. It's very interesting. So again, that love of language, that background, like, give me the facts about this character, this species. Very interested in that, which is exciting, because you forget how, whatever their passion is, whether it's, I'm interested in water, or I want to know everything about dinosaurs, but only this type of dinosaur. I mean, use that language, use the words that go along with that scientific language, and children just soak it up. It's amazing. It's so much fun.
So it's okay if they have a special interest. Like we had a big dinosaur fan here. Have a dinosaur right here on my desk. We have a big dinosaur fan here, a big solar system fan here. And it's okay if your kid can't read the books themselves. If you're reading books that are people might think are above their level to them,
Oh,
like if
please.
Okay,
Mhm.
because sometimes we go to the library, they wouldn't have, there's only one Bronchiosaurus book and it's not quite written for a 5-year-old. But that's okay if I'm reading to my child, even if their words are too big for them to read themselves.
Oh, absolutely. And we say that honestly, just, start at birth, go all the way through. We say that with our students who were, um, early elementary through middle elementary. It's like, your vocabulary, again, unconstrained. So therefore, you can keep learning new words and understanding what those new words really mean. And then what's great is then the students will start to use those words in their everyday language, and that will show up in their writing as well. So how awesome is that? That's what you want. So you're not constraining them based on like, what can I read? What can I spell? It's no, what do I know? Which is pretty exciting. So yeah, always, even though we have families who say, I don't know, my child wants me to read them anymore. They're older. I'm like,
Yeah.
no, I mean, or have them listen to, as if they're older children, have them listen to the books on like audiobooks, that kind of thing. Because
Yeah,
it's
that's what I was going to ask about because I know the Tony boxes are really popular. I
Mhm.
don't know if you've seen them with little ones in your family. It's these little characters and you can put in and it'll read your child a story. Or
Absolutely.
with older kids, being able to go on YouTube and listen to someone reading them a story or an audiobook. Is that okay too?
It's perfect. It's wonderful. It's definitely, it'd be even cool if like you could have the student hear it or the child hear it from that voice, and then maybe you could read it and it could, have different voices. My son was very much a Thomas the Tank Engine kind of guy. We went through an entire phase of that, and we would find my spouse would eventually say, um, I'm not reading it right. He's telling me I'm not reading it right because he wouldn't say the voices the way I would say it. I was like, that's true because
Yep.
you have a different narrator. And then I'm like, well, what's a narrator? Well, it's the person who's actually reading the story. And then eventually by 3, he was like, well, no, no, no. You people walk away. I'm going to read the book to you. And we all know it was from memory, but he did. So it's like there were times where we'd be, on a train or going someplace, and he'd have the book in front of me, but I'd be in the front seat reading the book again from memory, and he'd be
Yep.
like, no, we're not on that page. I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. Um, but I mean, and that was exactly it. They just learn so much. So that's the other part is if they need to read the book, even though as an adult, you're like, oh, please, not this one again. Um, you know, if it's time to read it for 757th time, read it the 757th time. Mhm.
Good.
It's just, it's something they need. And then as they want to read some of it themselves, do that. Go back and forth. Oh, well, you read this page, I'll read the next page. And you'll find that will help as they get older and they're reading, the chapter books and then the longer chapter books, that kind of thing. So you're basically early childhood literacy is you're just building all those great foundational habits. It's exciting.
That's so exciting. If you could tell every parent or caregiver one thing about supporting a child's language and literacy development, what would it be?
Honestly, talk with your children, read books and talk with your children. Yeah, just keep talking. Wait for them to respond. Keep talking, and then follow their lead too. If they keep pointing and asking what and why, answer.
And so I know some families have multilingual families where there is a language in the home, maybe with the parents or grandparents, but English is spoken at school. Should we be speaking English at the home only, or is it okay to speak our home language or read in our home language?
I'm so glad you asked. Things. Honestly, home language is fabulous. Multilingual families are amazing. And honestly, whatever their home language is, absolutely home language, 100%. Do whatever, works for their family. And eventually, children code switch back and forth, which is pretty exciting. We have children who come to school and teach our other peers, their peers, words and vocabulary. They're like, "Ah, I don't quite have the word for that. This is what I know it is." And then we'll look it up, or we'll have someone who speaks that language too, and they teach it to all of us. So it just expands out. It's beautiful. It's a
Oh,
fabulous.
that's exciting. Is there a benefit if you say speak Spanish at home and that's your native or your home language? Is there a benefit to reading in Spanish to your child if that's your home language?
Absolutely. 100%, absolutely. The nice part about Spanish is there's a lot of cognates, which are words that have the same sort of origin in Spanish and in English, so that cross generalization is pretty great. There's other languages that do that as well. Actually, all languages do it, but it's exciting to see that happen. So absolutely, family members, because again, all the underlying reasons to talk and have for books are still there. It doesn't matter which language it is. So it's sort of like what language is spoken at home is the language. Read, write, talk, listen, all in that language. And it's great. It's fabulous.
That's great to know. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate speaking with you.
Well, thank you. It's been a
Yes,
pleasure.
sir.
Thanks for tuning in to the PIC Family Voices podcast. If you found this episode helpful, be sure to subscribe and leave us a 5-star review. It helps us keep bringing valuable resources and stories to families like yours. Until next time, take care.